Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshur-unmilitam yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, so the journey of self-discovery. It's a 5-part session. Uh, we did part 1 2 weeks ago, Identity Crisis, which mainly talked about the soul and differentiating between the matter and spirit and how we're not the bodies. We went through both scriptural as well as scientific evidence of that fact. Then last week, we considered the topic of God, Param Satyam, of supreme reality. And this week, we're going to talk about karma theory. What goes around comes around. It's a very deep subject matter. So we'll only be touching the surface for this, but it's a start. And uh, if you'd like to go deeper in this, we can certainly explore it more in um, future weeks together. Next week, we'll talk about the principles of Bhakti Yoga, understand what Bhakti Yoga means, how to practice it, and then finally, practical spirituality, bringing spirituality to the world that we live in. Okay, so that's going to be the final 2 weeks. Karma theory, that's today. So this cartoon of the guy saying, fate, ha, I don't believe in it. All garbage when your time has come. Here's one idea of karma. They said Mexico has agreed to pay for this wall and Canada is supplying the bricks. Now, if you're a Republican leaning person, please forgive me for this joke. I just thought it was funny. Here's a video about instant karma. Hopefully you can hear it. Just give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound well enough. Oops. Okay. So that was not very peaceful, more violent kind of video about instant karma. Uh, well, I'd like to begin with asking all of you to consider the following. Take maybe 2 minutes, not 2 minutes, take 3 minutes, maybe 3 to 4 minutes, and ask these questions to yourself. And you can write them down if you like. What are the things in your life you do not like? Said another way, what are the things in your life you despise, hate, uh, run away from? Then ask yourself the question, why are they happening to you? Or if it's someone close to you, why are they happening to someone close to you? And do you carry any sense of responsibility with regards to that? That's on the negative side. On the positive side, what do you feel happy or proud about in your life? What made it happen? And then how long will it last? So take 3 minutes and journal for yourself, or at least take notes in your mind, the answers to these questions before we get started. I'll put some background music for us as that's happening. Take another minute more or so. Okay, if you haven't finished the exercise, you can do it later too. So the reason we're doing this initially is to kind of personalize this whole topic because there's going to be a lot of theory and philosophy, but it's very applicable to us, right? Obviously, karma theory, and everyone experiences karma. So I like it to be personalized for yourself as we go through this, as opposed to just learning something that's out there, some kind of theoretical law external to us. So the content is going to be based on the Bhagavad Gita and teachings of Srila Prabhupada, the person on the right. So is there a universal law that's governing, from a subtle standpoint, governing things that happen in this world? We talked about the concept of chance last week, and we talked about it from the context of the creation in general. Yet at every moment, we're experiencing life, we're having new experiences, and those experiences are those a result of just chance? Or is there a universal law that's actually governing what's happening to our lives? This is a picture of Ground Zero at the time when 9/11 took place. Some of you might have been around at the time. It was 24 years ago. Am I got that right? I think 24 years ago. Um, I still recall that day I walked into work and it was a horrifying horrifying experience to watch. And when I first walked into work, the first building had come down, or the first building was hit. And then moments later, the second building was hit of the two World Trade Center. And later I found out that, of course, about 3,000 people were killed. It was highly um, devastating for the entire country. So I found out when I grew up in Nigeria, there was a friend of mine that we went to the same school to, and he used to work at the World Trade Center. That morning, his alarm was supposed to ring, and he was supposed to get there at 10 a.m. He had a 10 a.m. meeting. He worked for Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers had, I think, one of the floors, which is a very well-known financial company. And as it turns out, his alarm didn't ring, or it rang and he didn't wake up, or something. And so he didn't end up going to work that day. So why is it that his alarm didn't ring and that he didn't go to work when others who were not supposed to be there somehow ended up being there at the World Trade Center? Good question, huh? Arthur Ashe, some of you may know him. He was a great tennis player. Um, and he won the Wimbledon, as you can see in the picture here. He's holding up the Wimbledon Cup. And he contracted AIDS because of blood transfusion surgery they went through. And somebody asked him, don't you ever wonder, like, why you had to somehow get that disease? Just bad luck for you? So then Arthur Ashe's response was just phenomenal. He said, I didn't ask God, why me when bad things happen? Because when I was holding up the Wimbledon Cup, I didn't ask then, why me? Out of so many people that could have won it, I won that cup. Such a honest and uh, you know, faithful kind of response that he gave. Some of you may have heard the flight that just in June that crashed in Ahmedabad. About 270 people were on board. It was an Air India flight. Devastating again. Everyone died except one person. Like, how did one person survive? What is the law that governs that? Is there a law that governs things like that? This is a picture of cancer cells. How is it that some people get it and some people don't? Some people get stage two, stage zero cancer, and others get stage four. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 they're gone within a few months, sometimes a few weeks. I have close friends who receive, all of a sudden they had brain cancer. They had to deal with tumors in their brain. It was not easy at all for the family. By grace, he's still alive and going. And then I had another very close friend who got bladder cancer. Within 2 years, he was gone. So how do these things work? Like, what is it that determines who gets it, who doesn't. In Spanish, there's the way it says that it is your turn. The way it's said is "te toca a ti." That's in Spanish. Means it touches you. Your turn, it touches you. And why I like that is kind of the way it's phrased is like there's some energy that we don't really understand or see, and that energy kind of like touches you, and then you experience something either good or bad or however you might see it. So when it's our turn to experience something, some subtle energy, boop, we're zapped by lightning and we get it, whatever that something is. Win the Wimbledon or get AIDS through a blood transfusion. So there's common inequities of life or inequalities of life. On the left side, nice healthy baby. On the right side, oh my goodness, it's terrifying. Of course, we all have life experiences around this. I have again friends who had a beautiful, for many, many years, they wanted to have a child. After 10 years, they finally conceived, had a child. And, they're strong, practicing spiritualists. Yet, 3 years later, 4 years later, after the child was born, the child died. Oh my God. Couldn't imagine what it's like to lose a child after having 10 years of intense wait and fervent desire. Finally, Krishna bestowed them with a child, and within a few years, he was gone. It was completely shocking for the family. And it took them a while to recover, especially for the husband, but for the wife, the faith was not shaken at all, despite going through such a very, very difficult time in her life. These iniquities of life you look around us, they happen all the time. And one may ask, okay, why this baby is healthy, why that baby is not? So it behooves us to consider these topics very carefully, as this young fellow is doing. So to understand karma, I will say something that Krishna says in the fourth chapter of the Gita, 19th verse. He says, Gahano karmana gati. Oh, sorry, 17th verse, I think. Gahana karmano gati. The law of karma is very difficult to understand. And it's not something we should take lightly when we consider our own lives or somebody else's life. It's a topic that has to be dealt with sensitivity. But at the same time, it's important to at least understand the fundamental theory that karma is, how karma is presented in the various the traditional scriptures. But to understand, before we can understand karma, it's important to ground ourselves in fundamental concepts. So this section, for the next few slides, we'll understand these fundamental concepts. Week one, we talked about how we, or all living beings, are spiritual entities passing through various stages of material body, and when the material body is no longer able to house that spirit soul, it dies, and then the spirit soul moves on to the next body. And so that's what this left image is showing. The spiritual conception of life, a spiritual conception of self. And another very important concept that we studied in our readings of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, chapter 17, and chapter 18 of the Gita, that there are three modes of nature that govern everyone. On the left side is yellow lady in the mode of goodness. The middle energy is the mode of passion, and the right energy is the mode of ignorance. And what this is indicating is every person is controlled to some degree by all three modes, which then determines the way they act. So the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance are constantly exerting its influence or their influences on every living entity in this material creation. And the living entity can choose, and we're going to talk about it soon. The living entity can choose to associate with one of these modes more predominantly, that then determines the quality of life they experience. So we'll see some more. This is again showing, how we live life in different modes of nature. On the right side is showing foods in the mode of goodness, wholesome, healthy foods. In the middle is, on top also you have mode of goodness foods. In the middle you have mode of passion foods, spicy, hot. And on the left you have mode of ignorance foods, which is decomposed, putrid, etc. So this is discussed in 17th chapter of the Gita. So by just selecting the modes, just selecting kind of foods we eat determines the modes of nature that we are associating with. So in the Vedas, there's different kinds of life forms based on the modes of nature, actually. There's the scripture is actually quite specific. There are 8,400,000 species of life. Just given. There's no scientific e- e- exploration required to figure out how many species of life. It's just given. The Vedas say there are 8,400,000 species of life, out of which there's 900 aquatics, 900,000 aquatics, sorry, 2 million plants, trees, and grass, 1.1 million germs and insects, 1 million birds of different kinds, 3 million animals and mammals, and then finally 400,000 different types or species of humans, which include demigods, humans on different planets, and within the material world itself, or the Earth planet, there are um, different humans of different kinds of consciousness and different dispositions, different colors, etc. So there's about 400,000 species of humans as well. Each of these life forms are influenced in different degrees by the modes of nature. For those in the mode of goodness, as the 14th chapter of Gita says, move more towards the higher level of life forms, humans and sophisticated mammals. Mode of um, actually and even demigods. The mode of passion will keep one in the same position there. They could be even the avians or the animals. And then finally, the mode of ignorance will take one down into the lower life forms. So we've got like 5 different questions we're going to go through, question sets, if you will. Why are some persons born rich, some poor, some disfigured, some beautiful? Why do the geeks get bad grades and the partygoers pass with an A plus? Why did my very sweet aunt get terminal cancer? Why did my father lose his job and my friend's neighbor's father got promoted? So this is where we try to understand karma timeline. Each of these little sections indicate a specific life. So here we are, a little action at this point in our life, we can cause a reaction right there. Or one might form an action here and you might get a reaction in the next life. Or you might perform an action here and you might get a reaction 3 lives later. Another view of the same thing. Action one provides reaction right there, immediately. For example, if you slap someone, very likely you're going to get a reaction quite immediately. Action two might not provide you a reaction until the next body. Action three may not provide you a reaction until the body number three. Now, What is it that determines when the reaction is dispensed? Tasyeva hetu pratyeta kovido na labhyate yad brahmatam aparyada. So the Bhagavatam expresses that time is very powerful. Gabira ramhasa, kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. When time is just moving and marching forward, you can't stop it. You can't even slow it down. Time just boom, 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 just moves, despite all our best efforts to try to keep things status quo sometimes. And in that unstoppable force of time, it just dispenses sukha and dukkha. It gives happiness and distress. And it is based on the dispensing of happiness and distress, and that specific time that it's dispensed is based on the conditions favorable to receive that reaction. So if I've done an action towards the end of my first body, A2, but I can't receive a reaction for it because, for example, I'm supposed to receive a reaction that I experienced the death of a parent in a unwholesome way or whatever. But at A2, towards the end of my body, I probably have already experienced death of my parents, so I need to go to my next body where I might experience R2, the reaction for A2. So it depends when the circumstances are favorable for that reaction to be dispensed. So the consciousness we have determines the consequences we experience. And on the right side is a nice I say, but it's a very descriptive, lucid, cogent way to understand how karma works. It all starts with avidya or ignorance. Because there is ignorance in one's consciousness, it leads to a sinful desire or bija. Bija means seed. So there's a seed for a sinful desire, and that means you have a specific sinful idea in your mind that then leads to papa. This is sin, where you actually engage in a sinful action, which then leads to what's called aprarabdha karma or unmanifested reaction. So there's no reaction yet, but it's stored. It's a stored impression in one's consciousness, in one's life, that doesn't manifest until the appropriate time, then it becomes manifest, prarabdha karma, which then leads to a feeling of suffering. So if you trace back suffering, it comes back to one's consciousness of ignorance. Now, aprarabdha karma, meaning if you don't receive a reaction for your sinful action, then it deepens one's sinful disposition. Ooh, I got away with it. No, no problem. I can be more naughty, if you will. And so that sinful disposition feeds the specific sinful desire, which then results in a sinful action and gets more prarabdha karma that might manifest at some point as prarabdha karma. That's where it's moving from a debt that you owe to a collection agency coming and getting you. That's where the prarabdha karma comes in place. So the consequences is this bottom piece, and the consciousness is the top piece. Okay. These are two graphic scenes showing how consciousness leads to consequences. So one might think it's okay to kill and eat animals. And the one on the right, especially, it shows how this animal will become a human, and this human will then become that animal in the next life to then continue the cycle of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. So this image is showing how we go through life. The body dies, this is death, and then life continues, taking on the next body. And it could be any of these various species of life, from aquatics to mammals to insects to germs to plants, etc. So I'm going to pause there for a second to just digest what we've heard and gone through and see if there are any questions at this time or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol, so.
I'm okay. First of all, I'm sorry for getting late. I had to pick up Bianca from the train station. Um, so you said that the dispensing of sukha and dukkha depends on when the circumstances are conducive, favorable, or like how do, I mean, it's, but a lot of times I've noticed when, like, when especially when dukkha is given or dukkha comes into your life, the circumstances are it just they're not favorable. I mean, there's like
Oh,
they
I
go
don't
from
mean
bad to worse, right?
mm,
Okay, I'm
yeah, I
sorry.
don't mean favorable as in favorable for you as a person experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
Favorable for the dispensation of that. In other words, like said, the example I gave is that one is an old person, they've already lost their parents, but they need to experience the loss of a parent in a, in a way that is premature. I experienced the loss of a parent as a premature when I'm young and I don't have shelter at that point. So I can't get that reaction until my next body, practically speaking, because I'm already an
Mm.
old person. So that's what I meant by favorable circumstances. It's when the situation or the circumstances surrounding that living entity who's housed in the material body can be dispensed that reaction. And the laws governing all of that is very complicated, not something that we can necessarily use our intelligence to figure out. But
Mm.
absolutely, I think from a subjective experiential standpoint, when it rains, it pours. Sometimes we experience joys that just, accumulate. Joy A, joy B, joy C. We just like, wow, this is amazing. Life is wonderful. And there are times when we experience the complete opposite, right? Where there's
Mm.
pain. And then just when we're like, oh my God, I can't take any more, there's more pain. And then it becomes more pain, right? And it can get quite unbearable.
Mm.
And it's difficult, very difficult. So what does one do? In if if there's a sincere spiritual practice, if there's a sincere spiritual practice, the devotee knows that whatever they're receiving is actually not karma. It's a token gift from the Supreme for us to ultimately come closer.
Mm.
And so that's how they see it. If the goal of life is to be materially happy, then difficulties are absolutely overwhelming.
Mm.
Yet, if the goal of life is to awaken love of God, then difficulties can be impetuses toward impetus. I don't know how to say plural of impetus, but impetus to move towards that ultimate goal. Hopefully, that's a little bit of
Yeah.
perspective.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah.
Okay, any other comment? Rinda, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question, Prabhu. So, in my mind, from youth to childhood to adulthood, as people, we will undeniably make sinful reactions, even if they're just small sinful reactions, sometimes on accident as you're a child, and maybe sometimes bigger ones when you're an adult, whatever. Um, the cycle will continue to repeat in my mind because I can't think of how, you could live your life so perfectly that you don't have any sinful reactions that this cycle will come to an end. And I understand that, the good deeds we do in life is also passed on. We say the importance of chanting and bhakti is so important because that will carry on to your next life and eventually add up. But I feel like that will always be counteracted by, at least in my experience, will be counteracted by even the smallest sins that we do that will add up over time. So how is it even possible to break the cycle and be completely perfect that we don't continue the cycle? If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, great question. And that's part of the marketing for Bhakti Yoga, which is part five. The question number five is how do we escape out of karma? I can jump there because you asked that question.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your lesson plan that we have, so
No,
we don't have to touch that right now. It's up to you.
that's fine.
Okay.
I like to serve people for where they're at and where the thought process. Can I be free from karma? Because that's your question. It's like, oh my goodness, it feels like this.
Yeah.
How do you get out of this? Poor guy in there, you can see the eye, and it's like, oh my goodness. So, karmani nirdhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. If by the process of bhakti yoga, the karmic reactions are completely dissolved. And love has the ability to wash away karmic reactions. Now, we can't get rid of the body we have. The body we have is prarabdha karma. If I go back to this, let me see, if we go back to this slide that we were showing you earlier. So you see this one, right? On the right side, prarabdha karma means manifest reaction. Each of us have a body, and the body comes with its own good and bad, right? We have a certain level of beauty, we have a certain level of disease, we have a certain level of hair. Whatever the features of our body are, the kind of family it's come from, etc., etc., the color of skin, all of that is it's manifest reaction. I can't change it anymore, right? And we're going to live with the body until death, whenever that happens. So there's that we cannot change. What bhakti does, though, bhakti, and this is where this what I'm showing you this chart, it comes from this book called Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Bhakti destroys ignorance at the root. So the cycle is destroyed at the root, where you start to gain transcendental knowledge of Divyam Jnanam, uh, about who you are, your relationship with God, and that loving relationship with God impacts the sinful disposition and therefore the sinful desire, and one doesn't engage in sinful activity anymore. So that's why Prabhupada would say, you avoid the four sinful activities. So we avoid meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. These four things, you avoid that and you chant. That gives you a foundation for getting rid of karma and making progress where love starts to awaken within the heart. So the cycle of karma doesn't continue. And even for a devotee who's a sincere practitioner at that point, even if they're experiencing, you could say, suffering externally, like they might get some disease for the body or something like that, that's even terminal, it's not a hindrance for them. And it's not something that oh, I don't want this disease anymore. And they don't become antagonistic towards, they don't see it as major suffering. Like Maharaj Parikshit, you see in the Bhagavatam, he was cursed to die in 7 days. He saw it as a big blessing. Wow, I'm just going to now hear Bhagavatam for the next 7 days with great intensity. To the point where, he just told Shukadeva Goswami, he said, please I'm done listening. Just before his death, thank you so much. I would now like to focus internally. He focused totally internally, very peaceful, deeply happy, and he left his body even before the snake bird came and bit him. So for it can be very glorious passing for someone who is um, finding happiness within. Uh, So you can see here, one experiences a karma-free life because you have that happiness within, and then there's no more birth and death. And this conviction is given by Krishna. Like, really, will I not experience birth and death anymore? That's your concern. Krishna gives this assurance. Antakale च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरं यः प्रयाति samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshaya. Whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there's no doubt. What does his nature look like? So he speaks about this another way. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So the cycle of birth and death is chopped by Bhakti Yoga, by having this transcendental knowledge of Krishna's appearance and activities. It's a matter of trusting it.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was perfect. I apologize for deviating from the path, but that was
No
great.
problem. It's all on the same path of bhakti. All right, let's continue on and cover a few more topics and then we'll pause. Okay. Question 2. Is destiny predestined? Such a interesting question. I know I have contemplated this before Krishna consciousness. Can I change things? Is it just meant to be? Was I just meant to live in Chicago? Was I just meant to have the wife and kids that I have? Was I meant to have the bank balance I have, or did I actually influence that in any way? Can I change things? Is my suffering just meant to be? Such an interesting question, right? People have pondered this. What's the balance between destiny and free will? What is that balance? The college we went to, the friends we have, etc. The mind we have. So, according to the Vedic teachings, predestination exists side by side with free will. Both. If I pick the right road, I will end up in the right ditch. If I pick the left road, very likely I'll end up in the left ditch. So there's a predestination of which road I might, there's a predestination based on which road I might take, but whether I take the left or right road, that's my free will. For example, the body I have today is my predestination. The body I get in my next life, that's partly dependent on my free will. I hope that makes sense. So, depending on the modes of nature I pick, on the left side, I might choose to pick to live like that. For those of you in college, maybe this is familiar. I don't know. On the right side, I may choose to live like that. Of course, maybe with without the champagne in the middle. And based on how I live, where do you think, in which home do you think there's likeliness of having roaches? Couple says the right side, the left side.
The one which is gross.
Okay, are you sure? Have you had the direct experience of this stuff?
No, thankfully no.
Okay, but obviously you get the point, right? Very practical. If you pick mode of ignorance kind of living, then very likely that you will experience living with roaches and mice, right? So the Bhagavad Gita explains this. What's predestination versus what is free will? In chapter 13, text 22, Krishna says, the living entity in material nature follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. So the circumstance of life that we are now going through is due to predestination. And our free will, to some extent, will determine our future. But some part of our future is also predestined to some degree based on previous activity that has not yet fructified. So uh, there's a constant flow of energy between predestination and free will and the choices we're making that keeps defining our future. Now, very, very important point uh, uh, that Arjuna or Krishna teaches Arjuna, Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna, that he tells Arjuna to be free of all the modes of nature, whether it be goodness, passion, ignorance, because all three are like different kinds of chain. They bind us as material world. If we're good, it's a gold chain. It keeps us bound. If we're bad, certainly it keeps us bound also. If we do good for others without a spiritual foundation or spiritual conception, then we were going to have to take another birth to receive that good back in some kind of reciprocal way. Therefore, it's known as a good chain, a gold chain, I'm sorry. So the mode of goodness is like a gold chain that keeps us bound to the material world. You help an old lady cross the street, oh, very nice. That's a good thing. You're going to get a good reaction in your next life. Or in this life, you have to receive that reaction back where you're helped across the street or something else, some kind of equal and opposite reaction. So is good karma good? It leads to having beauty, wealth, fame, intelligence, lineage, family life. Sorry, the family line that we're in, and strength. Janma Ishwarya Shuta Shribhir. So the intelligence we have, the education we have, the beauty we have, the wealth we have, the fame we have, all of these are indicators that we have some past good karma. If we are born in a middle class or an upper middle class or upper class family in the United States, we can make the assumption that we have some prior good karma that led to that. If we're born in a poor family, if we're very ugly, then we can make the assumption that that's probably not because of some bad karma in the past. If we have very strong intelligence, it's an indication that we've had, some good karma from the past, etc., etc. You get the point. So we can look at our own lives and then make that assessment. I would be cautious of assessing others with the same yardsticks because it could lead to judgmentalism and unwholesome interactions with others if we start trying to view others with that kind of mindset. Okay, but certainly you want to assess yourself, fine, go ahead. In the fourth chapter, Krishna presents three ideas of karma. There's this idea of Vik karma, where you break the laws of nature. It's an impious life, which leads to, you could say, bad karma, bad reactions. Then there's just good karma in harmony with laws of nature that's pious, that gets you to have good reactions. You have good children, good spouse, nice house, etc. That's karma. And then akarma. So this is an answer. Krishna presents this in the 4th chapter. Vrinda, in again in response to your question, when you engage in any activity that's God-centric, where you're doing it as a service to the Supreme, then you don't incur any karma anymore. Just like if you kill someone, you immediately get a bad reaction. But if you're a soldier in the army and you're killing for the government, you don't go to jail. So if you do something for Krishna, there's no reaction for it. You break free from the cycle of birth and death and all the karmic reactions. Okay, we'll maybe do one more and then pause for today. Question set part 3. What does God have to do with the law of karma anyway? And is he controlled by karma or does he control it? Where the concept of God being controlled by karma is actually a philosophy within the Vedas known as karma mimamsa philosophy, that higher than everything else is the idea of karma. So you just do good. It doesn't matter whether there's a God or not, because even God is under the control of karma. Of course, we don't subscribe to that. In fact, we consider that karma is a slave to God. And when God wishes, that karma subsides. Just by the power of bhakti, karma subsides. Is Krishna or God even aware of what might be going on in one's life? And as a result, very common question, why do bad things happen to good people if there's a God? Is he loving and is he a just person? So it's a very tough question to grapple with generally, but we'll just touch on a few points here. In the 5th chapter of the Gita, in a purport, this is explained that Nalipite, forget the verse, but Krishna's, in that verse is discussed that Krishna is like rain. Based on where rain falls on a rock, there may not be any vegetation. But if rainfall falls on fertile soil, then there may be vegetation. Similarly, Krishna has a neutral disposition towards living entities. Samoham sarva bhuteshu, na me dveshu asti na priya. So Krishna is neutral. No one is dear, nor does he hate anyone. So like that, how rain is neutral to where it falls. It may fall on barren ground or it may fall on very fertile ground. It may fall even on the sea where it doesn't need any rain. So the energies of God are working in this world and then they reciprocate with the disposition of a living entity. So if the living entity chooses a certain path, then God approves of and sanctions and allows for the reaction. So we'll see this more in chapter 13, text 23. Krishna makes a statement. In this body, each one of our bodies, there's another transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter and is known as the supersoul. So the word that's used here is upadrashta and anumanta. Upadrashta means witness, and anumanta means permitter. So he's a witness of what's going on for every living being, and then he permits the reaction to happen. Very often in the Srimad Bhagavatam, God or the supersoul feature of God, is equated, get this, to time. Kala or time as an energy is equated with God in our heart, supersoul, Paramatma. Time is a witness in our life, so is the supersoul. and time dispenses impartially based on one's actions, reactions of life. So similarly, supersoul, time is ultimately an energy of supersoul, and time is uh, given its potency by supersoul, but they're equated, supersoul and time. So the Supreme is seated in each of our hearts and is witness to our activities. We can't hide. So that's a brief on the Supreme. So again, we pause it and see if there are any comments or questions.
I'll only go if no one else has to go.
Go ahead, Vrinda.
Okay. I'll keep it brief, but basically I had a question about the mode of goodness slide, how you were saying like technically you don't want to in my understanding I thought we wanted to be in the mode of goodness, but so it sounds like you don't want to be in the mode of goodness either, because like you were saying, then you're just gonna reciprocate the good deeds that you do and you're gonna have to take another life to accumulate that back. So how do you like what does it mean to live without being in any of the modes?
Arjuna asked that same question in the end of 13th chapter of the Gita. So, mode of goodness is good. It's not bad, but it's not the goal. We should understand that trying to live in the mode of goodness, like the foods we eat, the kinds of things we come in touch with, the kind of people we hang out with, the books we read, that's all. We want to stay more in the mode of goodness, no doubt. Yet, there's a principle that's higher that Krishna is trying to indicate to Arjuna, the principle of bhakti or devotion or yoga, which is beyond the modes. So, how do you live in this world yet still act like you're beyond the modes? What does that look like, right? And so, I'm going to share my screen again. G14. Okay, so your question is text 21 from chapter 14. Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior? And very important, how does he transcend the modes of nature? Your question, right? So Krishna answers it in text 22 to 26. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, will long for them when they disappear. Who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active. Who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal towards the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities, such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. How do you get there? Because that's how does one transcend the modes of nature? So this is the symptoms that he's transcending the modes of nature, but how do you get there? One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So what does that mean? Moment to moment, serving Krishna. Moment to moment, serving Krishna. Through our hearing, chanting, serving, worshipping, um, even when we go to work or school or whatever, we're doing this as a service to Krishna. That mood of humble service is what transcends the living entity from the modes of nature into Brahman. Okay. So you can read the purport of that text, 14.26, and Prabhupada explains more about this subject.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Kapil?
Krishna. Uh, I was contemplating on the point about karma. In one of your classes way back, I think in July, I had noted it down. You had
You
talked.
gonna put me on a witness stand?
I just have a note down. So just asking, I was searching for that point for today's class so that I can ask this question. Just one more clarification. So I think somebody in the class asked this question. When someone else is going through a tough time, how do we interpret that? And the answer you gave was, we should never ever use karma philosophy because it might not be karma. Krishna is personally getting involved to take them closer to himself, maybe. And you also said that if we do that, it might destroy the relationships.
Hmm.
Could you please elaborate what exactly it means that we should never use karma? That's fine, but it might not be karma. Krishna is personally getting involved to take them closer to him. If they are not already in Krishna consciousness, let's say, how do we, what does that mean?
If they're not a spiritualist, then it is karma.
Okay.
But still, we don't talk to them about it. We don't say, oh, it's your karma, you're suffering. No. If it's happening to someone else, and if they're not a spiritualist, they don't have interest in the Supreme, then the Supreme doesn't get involved in their lives because it's a personal process.
Mhm.
God's a person. And so the laws of karma is acting on their lives. And so how should we approach it from the place of compassion and care? How can I serve in this situation? Whether it's karma or not, most likely it's karma for a non-spiritualist, but how can I serve them? So that's the mood of humble service.
Mm. Yes.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yes, it did. So let's say now somebody is in Krishna consciousness, then that's the case, right? Krishna might.
Krishna taken over their lives, yes.
Okay.
Because if someone's interested in God, he becomes interested in them. And what might come, and I'll show you a beautiful verse in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, text 56. So here it says dukkha and sukha, which Sue was referring to earlier. Dukkeshu anudvigna mana sukheshu vigatspraha. How does a devotee look at dukkha and sukha? Okay, very interesting. In this purport, uh, such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of threefold miseries because he accepts all miseries not as karma, as mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to spasmodies, meaning a devotee is thinking, because of my past karma, or what I've done, I actually deserve worse. And I'm getting just a token of my past misdeeds that Krishna is giving me, just so that I be serious about Krishna consciousness. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. This is how a devotee sees and understands their life that maybe, quote, from the outside look like suffering. Similarly, when he's happy, he gets sukha, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of happiness. He realizes it's due to the Lord's grace he's such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. A devotee in his humility, this is how he feels. I deserve worse. I don't deserve the happiness I'm receiving. I should have got more suffering, but by the grace of Krishna, I have less. And it's true. Krishna's hand is in their life. Okay.
Okay. And I love that point, Prabhu. You said that it's an indication to take devotional service seriously, right?
Yes.
Wow.
It's like I'm supposed to be hit by a bus. I get a little tap on my wrist to say, get serious. Okay.
Thank you. Prabhu.
You sure? And last question before we end for today.
Prabhu had a question on akarma. Does that help with canceling or reducing the previous karmas we have accumulated? So if someone starts following,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. So again, I'll share my screen to show you the scriptural reference. Uh, Brahma Samhita. Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam govinda mahadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yastendra gopa matavendra hosva karma. So let's look at the translation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of those who are imbued with devotion and impartially ordains for each the due enjoyment of the fruits of one's activities, which means karma, of all those who walked in the path of work in accordance with the chain of their previously performed works, that it influences no less in the case of the tiny insect and in the Indra, king of the Devas. So the first line is what's of interest. Who burns up to their roots all fruitive activities of who? Those who are imbued with devotion. That's the point. In the Sanskrit, it's karmani, all of one's past karma. Nirdahati is destroyed for those who are bhakti bhajam, who engage in devotional service, who engage in loving devotional service to Krishna. All your past activity is destroyed, yes. Okay?
Thank you, Prabhu.
All right. Okay, we'll end there. It's 9:15. And we'll touch on karma again, just because there are a couple of more concepts that we didn't cover, but we'll cover it next time if need be. And then continue on with principles of bhakti yoga. So hopefully this topic of karma given you a little bit more conviction that bhakti is a path to follow and it's helpful. And if so, we'll learn about what bhakti means more next week. Okay. So I'll pause the recording.